There are people who just live their lives quietly, privately, and intentionally. They go to work, they take care of their responsibilities, they stay in their lane. And then there are people who decide to start speaking up, not because they have it all figured out, but because they know what it took to get where they are. Today's guest is someone who has lived a lot and lived through a lot. And instead of keeping that to himself, he's chosen to show up consistently and share it. And what's interesting is people are listening. If you've stepped away from drinking or the things that used to numb you, you know it changes your life. But it changes the people watching you too. You become quiet proof that something better is possible. On Sober Life Rocks, we talk with people who realize that their choice wasn't just personal, it was a platform, a chance to be a leader, to shorten somebody else's learning curve, to do something that really mattered. If you felt that pull, you're in the right place. Subscribe and stay with us. Today's guest brings a perspective that we don't hear enough. Garet McLendon is someone who describes his impact pretty simply. It's showing up, being accountable, learning how to grow, and connecting with people. He works in construction. He runs his own repair business, and he's a sobriety executive at Mindset Recovery in Van Nuys, California. We found him because he shares his journey openly online, where he's built a following of people who resonate with his honesty and consistency. And today, I want to understand how this happened, because it's probably not a very polished, curated story. It's just a real one. Garet, welcome to the show.
Introduction, man. I really enjoyed it, man. It's receiving love and loving messages, man. Always, just hits me in the heart, and I'm always so grateful to have stuff like that happen in my life, because I wasn't always like that. Yeah, I mean, I never thought, I never thought throughout my time that I would have anything like, the life I have today, or be able to help anybody in the, stuck in the lifestyle I was stuck in. I didn't know, I didn't really think about having a purpose or having anything that, any kind of accountability or responsibility. I really thought my life was going to be somewhere else, than it is today. And
Well, so that I'd love to just start there because we'll get a
yeah.
little bit into what your past is, but I just want people to get a sense of like what is your life like day to day? What is a
Oh.
normal day for you like today? And what are the things that matter most to you just in your day to day? Nothing special, just your normal day.
My day to day, my normal. I really have a lot of structure and routine in my life today, and I wake and my days. I wake up early in my day as in a day, and it does not vary very much from this. I wake up early in the morning, and which 4:35 a.m. I drink a cup of water. I have a cup of coffee. I read. I have the daily disciplines of reading 86 through 88 of the big book. I read three spiritual books in which I change 6 months to a year. I keep a constant change of rotation. Of new literature, new stuff, new feed, new of all this stuff, and then I do a gratitude list. I mean, I sit there and I pray. I do a gratitude list, and then I go into my garage and and I work out. And I work out. They talk about the physical, in the inside this, and I work out, and yes, for many reasons, but for a lot of reasons because I got a head, and so I go in there and I take that little me time in the morning, and then I no, and then I wake up my son. I make breakfast. I pack lunches. I drop him off at school, and I get to walk him up to the I walk him to school, and I get to get down there, and I get to do what I never had. I get to hug him. Get to tell him I love him. Get to tell him I get to tell him that I'm gonna be there. We'll pick him up afterwards, and he knows I'll be there. And I go to work, and my work is very, it's demanding on all parts. It's just, I go out there, and doing what I do is sometimes I don't even think about it. You just do it. You just go out there, and life is life. And then I get home and I go to meetings. I go to meetings a few times a week. I help other members. I have sponsees and other guys that I help out, and I stay plugged in and connected into recovery, and I live like my utmost, just most amazing life ever. And that's besides the responsibilities. I very much enjoy life. And I remember way back when, people used to drag me with them, and they had, just to meetings or experiencing life stuff. I never experienced no life stuff. And that's like even like go as simple as like dining out at a nice restaurant, and or going on a road trip, and especially how you do all that basic stuff that no how do you know, like the basics, grocery stores, out to dinners, anniversaries and birthday parties and celebrating other people and like all this stuff, and like all these PTA meetings and school conferences, and I'm being a dad and being a father, and I hung out with people who were doing all this stuff, and throughout time, man, it just sort of, it just like that stuff, rubs off. I didn't know anything, man. I learned everything by just staying here in recovery. They talk about like the having a family, and like, before I ever had a family or had anything, what I had is I had the rooms of recovery. That was my family. That was my everything. It was just like, it was my, like they talk about like a guy like me. What really attracted me was having a safe spot. I grew up and then I grew up, and my home never felt so safe. My when I was out there on the streets or when I was in prison, it was always like I was on edge and looking around, watching my back, you always had and today, like I got to the rooms, and it became like a very like safe place to be. I felt like I could come
Mm.
into the rooms, no matter any meeting, anywhere I went to. I can come in there. I could sit all the way down. I could just take a big old breath and just know that I'm safe. I'm safe, man. And all that stuff in my head, like it's like going to a movie. It's like going to a movie. Like it's like, you go to a good movie, like you walk into a movie theater, and like, everything about your life shuts down. It's like it's not there, and you go in and you watch that movie, and you laugh, you cry, you all that, and then the moment, and then like you come out from that movie, and some stuff is still there, the stuff that mattered, but like it's like some of that stuff is not there. And I walk into these meetings, and I walk into these meetings, man, and I got a safe place, and I got a home, and I made this place my family, man. It's my number one main priority in my life is recovery. And because of
I love
that,
that.
man, I have two families. I got my family. I got my family. My kids, my day-to-day, my, all this stuff at a home family, and then I got my recovery family. And that's why it's so important for people to not really think about, like, it for us that stay, and they talk about like who are your people, like who are my people are the people who stay, because if you're not in it, I'm not going to see you. I spend a
Yeah.
lot of my, I spend like it's a lifestyle. It's no longer like I'm not doing it. I'm not like, it's not like it's a lifestyle for me. I'm not just like
Yeah.
going because people are telling me, because it's the thing to do. Like it's ingrained, and it's part of my life today.
So, Garrett, your life wasn't always that way. Can you just give me a taste, a snapshot of what your life was before you got sober?
Oh yeah. I'll tell you this. Just before I got sober, I won't even go that deep, but I'm gonna tell you what it was like. December 28th of 2012, I paroled one last time, and I got out, and and uh, and prior to me getting out of jail, I was at another facility. I went to a treatment center, and I swore I had like whatever it is, like I got arrested, again, and I'm back inside here, and December 28th of 2012, I paroled. I immediately got loaded. No resistance, no nothing, no. I immediately picked up. I immediately picked up. I went from a sober environment, a sober house. No, I was able, and I was in jail too. I was like, I wasn't getting loaded. I wasn't even doing nothing when I was locked up. Like I was reading the book, and I thought I had this. I was sponsoring myself, and I immediately, man, like, and I knew, like, when I got out that day from jail, man, like, I felt it all the way down into my stomach. I wasn't hungry. I wasn't tired. I felt it inside of me, and I immediately picked up. And I'll tell you what the next 45 days looked like for me is that I'm not one that I for some reason I stay loaded when I'm out there. I drink and use at a everyday basis. Every day, and that's all day and all night and all day and all night until not until I want to go to sleep or not until my body shuts down, until like I'm so like malnourished, or so like, just like my body is like shutting down. And I still fight that. Like I fight that. And I'm shooting at this time. I'm shooting meth and I'm shooting heroin. I got, and within 14 days, I got track marks up from my ankles up to my neck, and various ones down both my arms. I'm perfectly content staying inside, like just roaming the streets and living in the bushes and in abandoned houses, and like and just anywhere with no responsibilities or no running water, no gas, no electricity, no contact, no phone, no nothing, just out there amongst the animals, is what I like, is what I choose to live, you know and I my family, my mom, she used, and we used together, and on February 14th of 2013, which is Valentine's Day. I'm like, I don't know my I don't know, like, my pant size, my shoe size, my clothes don't fit me from when I got out anymore, and I'm living out of a backpack. I'm staying in a house. I'm house hopping, and just trying. I always thought, like, after staying out for 2 to 3 weeks or however long I did, I always be like, man, if I just had some sleep, everything would be all right now. And on Valentine's Day, I get in some illegal activity on the streets. I'm seeking revenge, and I call my mom, and she picks me up. We get loaded, and and everything eases through, and she drops me off at this liquor store, and I walk from the liquor store to this abandoned, little place, not abandoned, it's just like a trap house. It's a house behind a house place we go that's hidden off the main street. And my a friend of mine was staying there, and an off-duty officer saw me from that leaving that liquor store, and they just watched me where I walked to. And within minutes of me five, I mean, it must have been 10 minutes of me being at that house, man. It was fast, it was fast. I was able to sit down and get loaded. That's all. I was just sitting down and I was getting loaded, and the cops hit every door and every window, and they came in, they laid me on the ground, and I was arrested one more time. At this time, I've been arrested. I probably been arrested about you know 10 times, 4 prison terms, 5 violations. I have 168 traffic tickets. I never had a driver's license my whole life. I haven't talked to my daughter in about 8 years. I haven't talked to my dad in about 20 years, or my sisters in about 20 years. I haven't talked to, really anyone on that side of my family at all. I have no teeth. I have no self-worth, no self, nothing. Like, I stutter really bad. I can't pronounce words. Like, I have bad hygiene. I don't know nothing about taking care and responsibilities of all that day-to-day little stuff. Not I don't even know the little stuff. I know your basics from prison. I keep my area clean. I know how to, I try to make my bed when I wake up. Like, I have this routine of prison style living is the way I live, and on March 17th I got arrested February 14th, and I went to the county jails, and then inside the county jail, waiting for this time, I I eat happy cards, and a happy card is a thing with methamphetamine on it that people send inside there, and I'm loaded inside jail, and I'm drinking hand sanitizer with top ramen packs on it, just trying to get a head change, just trying to get that feeling, that easing comfort that comes with it. I'm just trying to shut the mind down, and on March 17th of 2013, I arrive at a yet another treatment center, and I'm that's my life. So that is like I didn't have no life. I didn't have no life, no life skills, no. I barely just survived out there on the streets, and I spent most of my life, that the 10 years or the 13 years before that, just in and out of the system, and more inside the system than out. I immediately, anytime I paroled, I immediately would pick up, and I would immediately after I picked up, it would be a matter of 30 to 45 days, that I was picked right back up. I mean, anywhere from 1 week. There was times when I was only out 4 to 5 days, and there was times the longest I was out, and a good 13 to 14 year stretch was 5.5 months. My disease takes over, and it consumes any and everything about me. So
So you get sober and you start learning how to do life. I'm curious when you decided to start sharing your journey online, because a lot of people would have a lot of shame about that, or a lot of feelings of like, I don't want to be that person anymore. I don't want people to be judging me as that person anymore. So, what happened to make you decide to be so public about it?
I never really we have lots of people out there who maybe are. I think I lived in the dark for so long that I never really thought about, living out loud. That they talk about anonymity, and they talk about lots of stuff, and like living out loud, this lifestyle. I mean, it wasn't something that I thought, that I would be doing. I sort of just threw myself into this way of this lifestyle of recovery. Like it was just, I had two choices: to go back to my old lifestyle, right? Or to pick up, or to learn a new way to live. And what I did is I was in a treatment center for 18 months, in which they taught me, and I'm so grateful for that amount of time. I got to really clean up the wreckage of my past, of all these tickets and community service and DUI classes. And, I had, get me a driver's license, or an ID card, a social security card, or birth certificate, right? I had like all this
A bank
basic,
account.
yeah, all that basic stuff, I had to get, and, and they put me in these groups, like money management, anger management, a therapist session, and I got to sit there, and I worked out, and I ate, and I went to meetings, and I just sort of, I got, I was able to stay put in one place long enough to take care of some stuff that it really had to be taken care of. And actually I was in there for so long that there was times when I sat there that I really wished that I would stay in there forever. Because once again, what did I create? I created a safe space for me. I created a place where, like, man, I woke up, I brush my teeth, I pray, I have this daily routine, right? I go to work, I come back, I eat, and I felt safe. And it felt like,
Mhm.
just like, if I'm inside here, I'm in a sober environment, I'm safe. Like it's like, it's very good, because it's scary out in the real world, especially when you have no skill, when you've been in prison for so long, and like I think I don't know how to live. I don't know how to be amongst people who haven't never been institutionalized, or never been to I talk different, I stand different, I eat different, like I'm loud, like I'm big too, I'm huge, I'm a big guy, so like I can make things really awkward. And so I had to learn this. I had to really go through, and really learn like another way to live. and I got
Yeah,
that, man. Like,
you'll, you're gonna laugh
and
because our stories are completely different, right? I didn't do
yeah.
all the stuff that you did. I had a completely different story. But the very first time after I went to treatment, that I went to my very first AA meeting, you sort of like walk in, and I'm 60 days sober at this point, so it's not the same desperation, but I'm terrified. I don't know any of these people. And so I look and
Mm.
I try to find like the quietest corner in the background. There's these sofas in this Alano club, and then there's this row of like plastic chairs in the back. So I go slinking back to the plastic chairs in the back, and I'm sitting there making myself as small as possible. And all of a sudden, this sort of boisterous people come into the room, and these huge, big biker dudes come in, and they sit down right next to me on either side of me. And I look up at them, and I'm just like, I think I'm in the wrong seat. And this guy clamps his hand on my shoulder and he goes, "You're exactly in the right place." It's true.
Exactly.
They were the guys who had been to prison. They were the guys who were the rough and
Yeah.
tumble. They were the guys who had not grown up with my background. And they turned out to be my closest friends because they had my back in ways that other people in my life never had. And it was amazing. So um, just because we have different backgrounds doesn't mean we don't have the same needs.
Isn't that saying that I always think about that too? Like we are people who would not mix, you know. And you come into rooms like that, and it's really that like common denominator of us, like that how that works. I love that. And yes, I related and being and as much like I felt so good. I had such a good man, so much passion and so much energy, and I had this friend, I had a buddy, that I met when I was in treatment that was there, like gave me this hug of amongst, as soon as I got there, he gave me this big old hug, man. And he welcomed me inside, inside this treatment center. And we are on this buddy system. And I love this guy. We did everything together, like it seemed like I was watching him grow and I got to be right behind him, leading him, man. And the part that hurts the most, man, is that I was there because I was in that treatment center for a long time, and I watched.
Go ahead.
And then, I was there and I met this guy, and this guy was like I got introduced to like a trudging buddy, and this buddy of mine, like we went, and we got to learn off one another, and it's so good to have somebody then with that same amount of time that you're doing this program with, and the thing is that he had like 9 months or maybe a year ahead of me, and I got to witness this guy relapse,
Mhm.
and it's hard, and you think like, man, we're not immune, we're not, and it's had me thinking like, and I got that other lesson, that we get here, and inside the rooms is that I'm not immune, and it all it was is I watched this guy, we got there, and like I'm telling you, like we were like peanut butter and jelly, like we did everything together, right, and then and I watched him get everything that he had, that the car, the license back, the car, the girlfriend, a place. He got this a great job and all this stuff, man. And at this time, like I wasn't even close to any of that. I wasn't close to getting a driver's license or then I got, I'm riding a beach cruiser. I'm riding this Debo's bike to this job I got through an agency because I'm a parolee, and all this stuff. But I really envied him, and not only that, like he always was really, really, he was really well word. Like he was really well rounded when it came to speaking and sharing and stuff like that. Like I wasn't. I didn't have that. Like I didn't have this. I didn't know how to pronounce words and share words, or let alone to read something and remember it, or anything like that. And like, man, we go to meetings together, and like if they forgot or couldn't find like chapter 5, he quoted from his head, and I really envied that, man. But when he went out. When he went out, when I saw him, man, and he left, and I'm calling him about his commitment, and and he's telling me like he can't do it because he has a date night, or he has to work another shift, or like he's telling me about like how good his life is, but like I'm watching how his program's going on the back burner after this, and I thought, man, like damn, like and I just thought, man, like I don't know, like it's crucial, like they always talk about like that thing is that we all have in common here is that we all are alcoholics and drug addicts, or we know how to use and drinks, but the thing that we all have in common here is we get a forgetter, and like if we're not careful and we're not going to meetings and we're not in contact with the newcomers and people inside this community, let alone then we forget about that misery and pain that was caused just before we got here. And Levi forgot, man. And I saw him, and I saw him a month or two after he went out, man, and he was unrecognizable as a human being. And I was the one giving him a hug, and I gave him money to get, to get a bottle, and all this stuff. And I really didn't talk to him, again, and no, and it really just makes me think, man, that like the longer you stay here, the more you see people. I don't have no I don't have no like special recipe or things like I can't guarantee your recovery. That's the thing. So I don't have no guarantees, I really, I love telling people you got to try everything around here if you're new, And then after trying everything, you got to figure out what works for you, and you got to do more of that. What works for you, and what I do is I find the stuff out of everything I do here, man, and trying. I find the stuff that really works for me, that resonates for me, that keeps me like enthusiastic. It keeps my it, like just like I'm passionate about it, I like that, and the reason I really think that I have so much enthusiasm and so much passion, for that recovery is because the life I have, and staying in the gratitude, and just being like, when you literally come from nothing, like the smallest amount of things that you have, man, are just like it's just like something that you hold on to so tightly, and it's not about like the material gift, I'm talking, like the relationship with my daughter, who I didn't, like that relationship with my daughter is, being a dad now today. Being a dad now, being able to work relationships and business relationships and all this stuff, man. Man, like I know, like, and I'm gonna tell you, like, like I really, I always try staying fit and I worked out all in prison. I had no choice, and then and so you got no choice. And then there was a time, when I got so clean and sober that I didn't really work out, man. I sort of just, I got sober and I threw myself into the recovery world of meetings, and I just hung out with people who do more. They just do, no matter what was going on in life, they just do more of this, you know and and like I didn't like running, and I didn't like none of that stuff, man. But I slowly but surely got, like got addicted to, it goes in different areas, and I working out, and they're running, and I just come, like I'm getting ready to do a triathlon now, like like blows my
Nice.
mind. I just did, and I did all these Spartan races and stuff like this. And it wasn't so much like, and people are like, oh, you got to train hard for all this stuff. Like, I'm not out there training like, my whole life away or anything like that, but I'm consistent at doing something. And the thing
Mhm.
is that it wasn't so much about like the runs and all that stuff, and I mean, yes, the physical part of it's good, but the thing about it is being able to be alone with myself for that amount of time, and my head is quiet, man. 4 to 5 hours on my last race, it was like 5 hours, and I'm gonna tell you, like when you're going through that stuff, and by choice, like your mind is really telling you, like, man, you don't have to be doing this. You can cut these corners. You don't, and it's that thing. And you really gotta have that mind over, that you mind. I mean, you're building that mind, you're building that mental part too. And I, and like, man, I'm gonna tell you, man, I just, like I swear there was times I'm just doing like the Lord's Prayer, like, just one step at a time, like baby steps, baby steps, baby steps, and I'm gonna tell you, like the amount of gratitude and that happiness you feel when you cross over this accomplishment. Like for people like me, I never accomplished nothing in my life. I never finished. I never accomplished. I never. Just when I give up when it got hard on anything. And for me, man, like when I cross over, when I get into and I put myself in these positions to challenge myself and to grow mentally and physically and spiritually, like you put yourself in these things. I want more. I want more. Like it's cool. Like when I came in here, the stuff I was doing that really got me, to stay here and doing, like that stuff is really good early in recovery, man. But like it has to be more when you get in. I want more. I don't want to be that ground level. Like I do want those deep down spiritual experiences that I hear about. Like I do want the experience here inside the rooms, not just the self knowledge. Like like I'm here because like I stay no matter how mad I mess up or how like we're still sober doesn't mean I'm not making mistakes. It's because I'm making mistakes and I'm like, taking a deep breath, admitting like, hey man, I messed up right there, or that was some self-will, or like whatever it is, and you just keep on going on, man. And and I owe it all, like my life, man. When I look at it, man, it's that the simplicity of it is that I do owe my life, to the program of recovery, man. NA, AA, it doesn't matter for me. Like, I already say, like, I'm bisexual. Like, I don't know if I'm a drug addict, alcoholic, but I know that I did both, and I know that the more work I can put in here, that, and the more I can just, get my mind, that the easier my life is outside there, like that the financial burdens don't bother you no more. Like, it doesn't mean I don't have them. It doesn't mean I don't have problems in my life. It just means that I'm not emotionally trapped by all this stuff. I'm not like just like, oh man, like focusing on that problem. I'm living more in a solution base of what if can I do something, or what can I do? Or the number one thing I have learned here is that, man, I ask for help. How do I do this? Why am I trying all myself? Why am I trying to do this by myself? I've never done it before. Why, of course I don't know how to do it, And so I really had learned, and the program has taught me help on the simplest of things. Simple help.
So, Garrett, I kind of want to go back to this idea that now you are in a position where so many people are following
Mhm.
you and responding to you. One of the questions I was going to ask is, why do you think people are responding to you? But I'm sitting back here just listening to you, just going, I don't need to ask that question. That's self-evident because your passion is contagious. But
Mm.
what is it you're hoping to do by sharing your journey so publicly on Instagram?
Yeah, I don't really have no like goal in sight, man. I just hope that anybody who needs help or wants help or just sees, whether it's spreading hope, that message of hope to people. It's being an example for people. It's shown, like what like to let people know that, man, that there is a better side, than that life out there, and there's a lot more, that once you get sober and you get clean, that there's a lot more to life than just stopping drugs and alcohol, And I
Did
and I
you
like
ever
to just,
imagine that it would get as big as what it's
oh
gotten?
man, know what people I hang out with tell me? They tell me it gets bigger. They tell me my life gets bigger. And it's just like, wow, than this. Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. And so, like, I think it's a constant. It's like, like, my message, as that I'm very I love carrying a message. Like, I'm very I like one. It's something, those things that, like, I love, and I just love doing it, man. It's just like being. I stood in front of hundreds of people and being able to carry a message, and I carried a message in front of a few people, but like that language of the heart that we got here, when I'm able to, like, just just totally just be that filter, or this line of, to reach these people, like helping people, man, like helping people helps me. And so like that's all that, man. I'm just here to help, to be an example, to be a rock, to be like, to let you know, like anything positive you can. I'm that person, man. I'm here to build you up and get you through the rough times, let you know it's all right. Like like I get it. We get it. Like they say, it's not so much of what you're thinking about than it's so much as what you're doing. Like, what are you doing? Like, it's cool that we have this problem, but what are we doing about it? What are we doing? Let's get out. Let's change this mindset. It's always, let's change the mindset, man. Let's change the mindset. Let me get, first and foremost, let me get you out of you. You know.
So, since you've gone so public with your journey, now that people are watching you, do you feel like there's a sense of responsibility with that, or that it's changed how you have to show up in your own life?
No, I don't think it should just, I think that I just have to keep on living the way I'm living, and keep on being an example. I don't think that I'm gonna live a certain way, because like I'm in an anonymous program, I carry a message, like it's just, not yet. I haven't, not yet, not yet. Mm.
And what is your hope by spreading this message so publicly that, or have you experienced moments when somebody's hit you up online or DM'd you and talked about the impact that maybe you've made on their lives?
Oh yeah, I have, and I get lots of love, and a lot of it by being an example. And lots of people reach out to me, and I get to talk to them, off the ledge and all that stuff. And and what it is I get to put love where there wasn't love. I get to care where maybe the person thought they weren't cared about. I get to give them I get to listen to a problem and just give them a new way to think about something. It's like a lot of times, like, I'm teaching them, like a new way to do something they already know how to do. Like it's just like, let me know, like, and it's real, like, and the other thing is that, sometimes I don't have an answer. I don't have a solution. Sometimes I just listen. I'll just listen. I don't have all the answers. I haven't experienced everything in life. But I do know I how to listen. I do, I do have some kid, I am, very considerate about what you're going through, and I can listen, and maybe it's somebody I know that's in my, that's hanging around me, that I can introduce you to, that could help you, and that's another thing that we get around here, is that connection of people. It's like, oh man, let me introduce you to Bob right here. He knows, or let me introduce you to Debbie. Debbie's been through that. Here's somebody, like here, that's what we get to do. And the number one thing is too, man, is that, man, is a laughing, like we get to meet, and we get to do stuff, and we get to laugh and be silly, and just, be like, man, get some humility.
Okay, a couple more questions for you.
Got it.
Every industry thinks that they are the industry that is the worst in terms of people who are drinking or using. And I know construction is one of those that traditionally has a lot of that. So how do you navigate that today?
Um, you know, Let me tell you this, is that, as much of an example and everything I am, like what people do out there, like I'm not trying to I'm not trying to carry a message to nobody who's not trying to listen to a message, or somebody who's not ready to receive a message. So they could see me, and they may ask, and they may, and all this stuff, but like, if there's people out there that can live like that and can do that. It's just that, just it's not my business. It's not my business. I'm not. They see me, and they'll ask me the questions like, "Oh, you don't drink, or are you to this, or you to that?" I don't drink. Like, I'm no, like, there's people out there that, they don't
How do you
know.
respond? How do you respond when you get that kind of people coming at you?
Oh, no, thank you. I don't, I'm not like, I'll be like, oh, so if they ask, if they push it on me, like, I'll say no, and then just gradually climb, but, and if I have to, I'd be like, I'm sober, or I don't drink, and a lot of people know, you know, they just know that Garrett doesn't drink, or they're like, and a lot of times what it is people are so very intrigued about it. Like, damn, not even a little, not even not even at this great moment, like we're going to toast, you sure? And not even at those times, not even at those times. And so, and sometimes people, and sometimes those people, like it's so, like maybe my character and the way I am, and maybe the way I carry myself makes it so people won't approach me or they won't come around me. I'm too sober, or I'm living this different life, and a lot of times, like I don't, like my, like I'm not my conversations. I don't do that small talk. I'm not into that small talk with you, like like I'll keep it surface with you, but like like I'm not going to have a conversation with drunk people. I'm not going to sit there and engage in any of that. I'm not in that circle. I'm not going to sit amongst people who are drinking or but like if I go camping and we go camping and we have these big old campfire parties, or sit around a campfire, and there's plenty of people that drink, or I'll go out and
Mhm.
we go to these dinner places, and like and people I'm with at dinner have drinks, and that's all right. I don't want somebody to be like, oh, I got to be sober around you. I want you to be who you are, because I'm just being who I am. If you drink, but like I'm not going to be like, oh, you can't do that. That's not my place to be.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. You've talked a lot about the difference in your life before and after, and it's such a beautiful thing. What what do you see as the number one biggest change in how you navigate the world, how you see yourself as a person in today's world? What's changed?
Oh, the change in my world is my like being a responsible person. Like
But how do you
you're.
see yourself? Like what is your new definition of Garrett?
Oh, my new definition. That's a good question. My new definition of Garrett. Let me see here. You know, um, I really, really, I have a 6-year-old son. And so the lifestyle, and I'm a full-time dad, not a part-time dad. Like I'm a full-time dad, and being able to adapt to that lifestyle, and what it is that I get to care and I get to love a child every single day. And I think the best part about that, the best, and it's really like at the same time, I think it's really the therapeutic value of like I never had that, you know. I never had that. So I really look at it like, man, this is really healing all these parts of me that I thought were broken, by being like being a dad. Like, oh my God, like at first you're like, oh my God, this is like a burden, but I did, and I didn't, and some reason is because I didn't know how to be a dad. And so when I look at people and the people say like, yeah, I'm just a member of, in recovery. I'm no different than anybody that's in recovery. The thing is maybe I do a little bit more service work. Maybe I go to a little bit more meetings. Maybe I carry a little bit. I carry some more of a message, and I definitely make sure that I don't let the gifts of recovery get in the way of gifts of recovery. Is that no matter how good my life is that I try to I still make sure that I have a life in recovery, you know. And when you see me, man, and that definition, like of Garrett, man, I just hope that they, like he's a good dad today. He's a good person. He's kind, he's caring, he's loving, you know. Like he like I like hearing that stuff. He's a nice guy, because those are all the things
Mhm.
I was not before when I got here. He's responsible, he cares. He'll show up at 2 in the morning, like he'll, talk you off the edge, like, and at the same time, like man, he's, like I got into, like I'm a sunset chaser, a sunrise and sunset chaser. Your the things in life became bigger, to me. Like I got, I traveled a little bit and I got to see parts of the world, and like man, you realize how small you are, I just look forward to getting out somewhere and other states and being, and being able to and being able to share, amongst California. So
Tell me a little bit about mindset recovery so that people know what
mindset
that is.
recovery, man, is it's been going on for like 3 years, and it's just it's a whole new learning experience for myself. It's getting to learn something that I knew nothing about, on the front end, and mindset recovery is just like one of those. It's just like, man, it's one of the best things I can think about, man. It's like it's the future. It's the future.
Beautiful. Garrett, I have just absolutely loved having you on this podcast. And I always kind of like to close with some reflections that I've taken from this. And one of my favorite things about being a podcast host is that I can do some research. I can learn what I can learn about you online. I can think that I know where a conversation is going. And then the human shows up and the real conversation happens. And I am absolutely blown away by Garrett's authenticity, his rawness, his passion for life, his joy with his sober choices. And I think that that's what's attracted so many people to his Instagram following. And we'll put his link in the show notes as well, because if you aren't following him, hopefully after this you will be. And the other thing I took away from it is I can get in my head an awful lot about how I show up, how I sound, how I'm coming across to people, whether anybody's listening or not, whether it makes any difference whether I say something. And after having this conversation with Garrett, for me, I think it's super easy to overcomplicate things. And instead of just living in the moment and being fully transparent and fully authentic and fully full of joy as he is, um, I think sometimes we hold ourselves back. And so, my invitation to you is whether you live out loud online or in your community or at work, don't overcomplicate it. Just show up as you, because you are enough. And people are listening and are watching. And maybe you'll make a difference by the way that you show up, just the way you are. Until next time, thank you for joining Sober Life Rocks.